Somebody posted a question on their channel about what kind of videos they should do. Uh, I'm going to say it's a friend Maya, and I would just tell you to do things that are interesting to you, or maybe videos about things that are around your home, where you live, um, just things that interest you. I'm doing this video, it's to warn people. I'm tracking an event called .com Bubble 2. It's officially unnamed yet, but I predicted this event 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and there was no information published at the time. There was no warning or anything. But basically how this event, and I have a list upstairs, I don't have it with me. Basically how this event worked, and you can look up .com Bubble, was that up to 2000, right before 9/11, there was people paying insane prices for .com sites that just started. Boo.com spent $188 million in just 6 months. Books a Million. There's a whole list of companies here. Some companies almost failed, like eBay and Amazon.com. Like I said, there's a whole list here. Open.com, VA Linux, and lots of people lost tons of money. I had a neighbor that was going to invest some money. I said, don't invest any money right now. It's a terrible time. You want to buy low and sell high. And here's a composite index spiked, and the event is yet to be named. I'm calling it .com Bubble 2. About 6 or 8 months ago, I met a really big person in the computer tech industry, and he was working on a logistics project related, a counterintuitive logistics project, and we talked about this company. And at the time, my friend was driving a taxi here, and he was totally being ruined at his job by this company called Uber. Now, Uber calls itself a transportation network, a taxi company, and they play these legal games with the government. They say they're a taxi one day and a taxi the next. Their drivers don't pay any taxi insurance. They don't have any transportation insurance. They just have regular cars, and people get an application on their phone, and instantly they're driving drug dealers around to buy drugs and making all kinds of money. And I've done research on it. You pay 20% to Uber and 25% to the government, and put gas in your car and pay your insurance, and by the end of the day you're just another screw Joe, like driving a taxi, but they're unregulated. And Uber is making a ton of money at this. Uber is the world's largest privately held venture capital company. It's if you're interested in technical stuff, and a lot of my videos, but my technical videos get huge hits, I would do some research on this. But if you're not feeling well, Maya, this is for you. Just don't bother reading about Uber. But you may have Uber in your town or country. If you live overseas in the Middle East or Europe, we have them here. And it's a very cryptic company. They have $41 billion in venture capital, and that's all they do. They make about $1 to $10 billion a year. So, I mean, I'd say about $4 billion. Their return capital is somewhere around 10%, and they spend $1 million on lawyers. But they park in a taxi cab stands and say they're not a taxi, and they just generally rip everybody off. I mean, some people think it's a good idea. Hey, if you're in a car accident and you want to get in an accident and not have any insurance and get ripped off, and this is the way to go. This company, they're totally illegitimate. But for whatever reason, there's a few companies that come up under my radar that are tech companies, and they all have shady things going on, and that's why I'm doing this video. And I want to warn you about these companies. Now, one is a very large profile company, and I'll get into that in a minute, and that's Google. And the reason I'm mentioning Google is because Google's founders are very shadowy. Google was originally started at UMBC with some shadowy connections to NSA. It was well documented here. Then there was stories changed in here. It says they were developed at Stanford. Everything like this always develops at Stanford, right? Well, I mean, how did the story go from them being a local company at UMBC 10 or 15 years ago? Because been using Google since the beginning. They were an awesome company. to Stanford. Something just doesn't gel right, and all of a sudden you have these Russian characters in here running the company. And I've heard rumors about Google and its connections to NSA, and just in addition to the story that I heard, which keeps getting further and further from the University of Maryland, and I doubt that Maryland would even come up in this article if I searched it. I would stay away from Google. I'll give you some additional facts in a minute. And nothing comes up on this article about University of Maryland or Maryland. I mean, it was very well established in the beginning that Google had ties to the University of Maryland. Now it's apparently attached to this. I guess they think they're all retarded and we just don't know anything better. I'll check the stock value, and I'll tell you why not to invest in Google in a minute. Now, Google's stock value is $542 a share, and their value is close to or under close to Apple. And the people seem to think that that's a relatively good idea, although when you buy a Google Android phone, you don't buy your Google Android phone from them. They develop the software and they sell it to Motorola and everybody else. Here's the thing, buy it at $375 because the stock is headed for a whatever. We'll just type Apple. Now, I like Apple. I have a website called applemothership.com I just started. And it goes into all the things that Apple are working on. I wouldn't even bother to say why. Apple stock is $126 a share. Their stock is a lot less than Google. Their overall value is $710 billion. But if you look at Apple, they've been around for 30 years. They have a big company, a lot of people who've been there a long time, and they've gone through ups and downs, and they've been around. So I would invest in Apple over Google, especially if you could sell 4 or 5 shares of. Especially if you could sell a share of Google and you could buy 4 or 5 shares of Apple. That's a good investment right there. PayPal Mafia. A list of the companies that I'm looking at, whenever I look at them, they all come back to PayPal Mafia. One is SpaceX, which I don't know if it's a public company. We can get into that. And one is Tesla. There's a lot of companies that came out of the PayPal Mafia. Now, PayPal Mafia is another story like Google. They were a money transfer service offered by Confinity, blah, blah, blah. And if you wanted to buy something from eBay back in the day, you had to go through PayPal, and they would, quote, guarantee that you wouldn't get ripped off, and then you get ripped off. And it was run by Russians. And just as with Google, the story of Elon Musk is shadowed. There's 2 stories about Elon Musk here. Now, Elon Musk's latest story is that he was born in South Africa. Here it says he was born in West Germany. Then there's another story going back a couple years that he was born in Russia. If you look at Elon Musk, I'm sorry. Alright, yeah, South Africa. I was looking at Peter Thiel. He's another character that's on the Bilderberg group who gave $1 million to Ron Paul. But, okay, yeah. Elon Musk says here he was born in South Africa, but then the story was he was born in Russia. So, I mean, basically what we have here is a bunch of Russian-type characters, something called the PayPal Mafia, and all these companies that are way, way overvalued. Like, you know, what is the value of these companies if I look at the value of Tesla? Of $201 a share. I mean, come on, you don't see some kind of trend here developing, and Tesla is going through some of the same issues that, you know, not being allowed to, as Uber's not allowed to sell cars in certain states, or, you know, because they don't have dealerships. It's like you need a middleman to sell cars under U.S. law. in the United States, but yet, Elon Musk wants to sell cars, and he's making cars, but he don't have dealerships. It's like, couldn't he have established dealerships to sell cars? Or is that, is that just another step to cause problems with the big three? I mean, we only have 3 automakers in the U.S. Why is that? We used to have 50 or 100. SpaceX, same thing. Type SpaceX stock value. There's a good video here on U.S. Senate hearings. Talks about why we only have 1 rocket manufacturer in the U.S. and how they have to be reliable. And they talk to Elon Musk, and he makes this very nervous, speech. But more than anything, I suspect he is just scared to death that somebody's going to find out his big secret. SpaceX stock is not for sale yet, but they will be. Solar City is another company that's listed under Elon Musk. I just stay clear of them. The last few solar companies that opened up went under, and I would suspect these are socialist Obama front companies, CIA front companies that are being pumped and dumped, or they just don't know what they're going to do with them, or trying to make new companies. I'm not really sure. I'll do a search on failed U.S. solar companies, and a bunch will come up. The list of deceased solar companies. Here's a list of closed solar companies: Advent, Applied Solar, Opta Solar. So why are all these solar companies going bankrupt and Elon Musk is running his solar company? Some of these have big investments like BP, Bosch. Guess it doesn't pay to make solar companies in the United States. So that's all. Just a warning: if you have stock in one of these cryptic U.S. companies, Google or anything related to the PayPal mafia, I would sell my stock, invest it in gold and silver while it's low, or move it to Apple stock and diversify your portfolio.